friends, welcome to our midweek moment. Pastor Nicole here. So glad you clicked on. This week we continued on in our sermon series, Storyteller, the Parables of Jesus, and we took a look at the parable of the unfair paycheck, or you might know it as the parable of the vineyard workers. Basically, the story talks about an owner who hires people to come and work for him. He promises to give them a denarian, which is the going rate, right? 1 day's labor wage. They work all day, 12 hours for that wage. Throughout the day, he continues to hire people, telling them that he will pay them a fair wage. At 5 o'clock, like an hour before the end of the workday, he hires workers to come, promising them a fair wage. When it's time to pay everybody, the owner gives a full denarian to the people that only worked an hour. Amazing. So the people who work 12 hours think that they're going to get more, but they don't. And they just get 1 denarian, which is exactly what they agreed to, but now it's not looking as good, right? So we talked a little bit about about this parable and how challenging it is and how hard it is and how it reminds us that, man, we want life to be fair, but it is not fair. And maybe our idea of fairness is not God's idea of fairness. So we talked a little bit about what that means in the realm of God's grace. I've been reading along with parable as I've been prepping for the parable series, this book, Short Stories by Jesus. It's written by Amy Jill Levine, who's a New Testament scholar. She's a Jewish woman, and she brings a really incredible view to these parables and kind of helps us to see it maybe in a different way. And one of the things she said about this parable in particular was that it's kind of like a middle school group project. And the minute she said that, I thought, oh my gosh, I hated middle school group projects. I hated group projects all through my time in school. I remember I had one in college. It drove me crazy because there were a group of us that did all the work and then some that did none of the work. You know the story. You've been involved in it. I've even heard my own kids complain about how they had a group project and they did all the work and so didn't do anything and still got the grade. It's a tale as old as time, right? And we might even hear that story from our kids and be like, oh, such an injustice. We should email the teacher and let them know. What Amy Jill Levine reminds us in this book is that that's what this parable is all about. People getting the grade for not doing as much work. And I thought, wow, that's a really fantastic modern retelling of that parable. What a great illustration. And I want to read a little bit about what she wrote because I think that it gives us maybe a different perspective on how we are dealing with these group projects. Okay, so she kind of lays it out that there are 4 people in the group. 3 of them are really involved and engaged, and then you have this 4th person, right? So she writes this. That 4th person believed in the system. That 4th person whom we dismissed as lazy, as stupid, or as unable to contribute may well have done what he could. He may have felt himself unworthy. Indeed, with 3 others, may have signaled to him that they were disappointed that he was assigned to the group. He trusted in us. He trusted in the system. Had we been more generous with him rather than resentful, we would have learned more as well. And then she goes on. And if he didn't care at all, what if he depended on us even though we were fools for doing his work for him? What we do is still worthwhile. We can afford to be generous. There are other systems of justice, like test grades, in which his contributions or sins will be assessed. We are all brothers and sisters, keepers, and living in a community is another form of group work. We all have something to contribute, even if what we give is the opportunity for someone else to provide us a benefit. If we take more seriously this necessary interrelationship, we might be more inclined to consider others because our actions, whether for ill or for good, will impact them. And if our good deeds aid somebody else rather than begrudge them, why not celebrate all who are justified? I love this thought because we've all been there with a group project. We all understand how it's unfair if somebody doesn't do the work. But when we take a look at the situation with eyes of compassion, like the owner of the vineyard, maybe that person that wasn't pulling their weight couldn't pull more weight. Maybe they were doing the best that they could. Maybe they were intimidated. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they just didn't think that they had anything to offer this group. And maybe you're thinking, well, that's a very generous reading of the situation. And maybe it is. But even if the person was totally irresponsible and didn't care one iota, can't we still be generous? Can't we still offer grace and love to that person? Because we don't know their whole story. We don't know where they've been. We don't know what's going on with them. Maybe we can afford to be generous and to take care of one another, because that's part of what being in a community is that we take care of one another. And so it may not be fair, but it doesn't have to be, because as we've talked about, life isn't fair. Life is not fair. And so maybe something really unfair happened to that person, and they just aren't able to contribute as much to the community as the rest. It really has me thinking this idea that, wow, our job as Christians is to care for one another, to be there for one another, even if the person can't reciprocate what care we have given. As we think about how God's grace is given out, it's not fair. We talked about that on Sunday, right? It is not fair. And we're supposed to follow in God's footsteps. And we're supposed to also say, it's okay that it's not fair. Life's not fair, and so I can afford to be generous. I can afford to be generous in grace, in love, in compassion, in kindness. There's so many ways that we can be generous with one another. So as you go about your week and you see something, an injustice, something that just seems so unfair, maybe take a step back and rethink about it. Think about it from a different perspective. Think about it with eyes of compassion, like Jesus would have us do. And maybe that will lead us into deeper relationships with one another. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Join us this weekend as we continue on in our series and we talk about the parable of two prayers. Two men that offer two very different prayers, and Jesus has some things to say about it. So join us in person or online, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.